Never should have raised my hands to you.
As long as you realize.
Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we are summarizing the 6th episode from Season 6 of the Sopranos series titled Live Free or Die. The episode first aired on April 16th, 2006. In the beginning, we see Tony sitting down with a beverage and a magazine near his backyard pool. He takes a deep breath as he feels the wind blow across. As soon as he is settled down, he hears the condenser unit of his central air system making noise. This snaps Tony out of his zen-like state, and he goes to check out what the issue is. When he walks over, Tony notices that the lid has come loose, and this may be causing the rattling noise. He is unable to snap the lid back onto the condenser unit, and so he becomes quite upset and ends up tossing it into a bush. As soon as Tony sits down, the condenser unit starts making noise yet again. This scene may not seem like it is, but it is crucial to our understanding of the episode and Tony's condition over the last couple of episodes. Tony recently underwent a near-death experience, and this has brought on a new outlook on life. Although Tony feels he has changed and grown from this experience, life has a certain way of bringing out our nature, regardless of how enlightened we may claim to be. When Tony comes out to sit, he relaxes in his backyard. He comes to feel the breeze, mentioned in the Ojibwa saying. However, just like the saying itself explains, Tony is carried away by the same breeze he came to relax in. He is carried into a fit of rage when he is faced with an obstacle.
Yeah, that's right. Telephone tough guy. Put Vito on the phone.
As we catch up with Christopher, we see he is at one of his AA meetings. While outside for a smoke break, an unknown man named Mucci approaches Chris to share some interesting news he recently received from his cousin. It turns out that Mucci's cousin is Sal Yakuzo, the man who witnessed Vito dancing with a man at a bar. Immediately after Chris hears the news, he heads over to the Bada Bing to tell the guys about Vito being spotted with a man. Tony and the rest of the crew members are shocked to hear the news, but Tony wants to make sure the rumor is true before taking action against Vito. Multiple members of the DeMeo crew try calling Vito on his cell phone, but Vito does not respond. This is the first red flag that something odd is going on, and perhaps the rumor may be true. Benny Fazio is also tasked with tracking down Vito, and when he finds him, Benny tells him that he needs to check in with Tony. Vito agrees to meet with Tony and says that he'll follow Benny over, but instead, Vito jumps in his car, accelerates, and runs away. After this, Vito heads back to his home for some cash he has stashed away in cans. He tosses all his money in a duffel bag and kisses his children goodbye as they sleep. Before Vito leaves, he takes one of the framed photos of him and his wife with him. He hops back in his car and drives off. While Vito is driving, it is also raining heavily, and we see Phil Leotardo calling Vito again. As a result of this call, Vito rolls down the window of his car and tosses his phone so that none of his crew members can reach him. As Vito continues driving down the road, he ends up running over a huge branch that had been blown onto the road as a result of the stormy winds. This scene reminds us of the Ojibwa saying from the previous episode. We see how Vito, like many of us, simply is not in charge of his destiny. We see firsthand Vito ends up wherever the wind takes him. After driving over the branch, Vito can no longer drive his car and is forced to walk into the next town along the road. Once he arrives in New Hampshire, he heads over to the first hotel he spots with a vacancy. The owner welcomes him and refuses to take the money up front and tells him he will be charged for the room in the morning. She also tells Vito that she knows a mechanic who can pick up his car in the morning as well. As we catch up with Tony, we see he is with Silvio. The two of them are continuing their search for Vito. When Tony calls Vito's cell phone, a road construction worker picks up Vito's phone from the side of the road. Tony commands the man to put Vito on the phone. The construction worker ends up taking offense to Tony's tone, and he also tosses the phone under an asphalt roller, crushing the phone instantly. Tony doesn't even get a chance to learn where the phone was found. Tony's ill temper costs him being able to find Vito. Had Tony spoken to the construction worker with respect, he would have been able to locate Vito sooner and perhaps provide protection against Phil Leotardo. They head over to Vito's house. Silvio leaves Tony in the car and he heads over to Marie. Silvio ends up asking Marie about her marriage to Vito. She grows increasingly uncomfortable and refuses to answer any questions in detail. When Silvio heads back to the car, he tells Tony that he has been working around women for a long time and he can tell that Marie has not been intimate with a man in a long time.
Frankly, I think they go about in pity for themselves.
Remember, I am summarizing this entire series as well as other popular works of literature, movies, and TV shows as well. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next episode or series. Let me know what you'd like me to summarize in the comments section below. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, visit our merch store, and support us on Patreon if you can. Doing this helps my channel tremendously. I thank you for your support.
Where do you think he might have gone, honey? So we can get him back here.
When we cut back to Vito, we see he wakes up and heads to grab breakfast and ends up sparking a conversation with Jim Witowski, the short order cook he meets at the restaurant. Jim ends up telling Vito that the best thing to eat at his spot are the in-house sausages and Johnny Cakes special, which are essentially pancakes with a little cornmeal. Vito agrees and takes a sip of his coffee. While he is sitting at the counter, we see Vito gazing at Jim's arms while he is cooking. On his next session with Dr. Melfi, Tony speaks about his current predicament with Vito. Tony explains that although he is not a fan of Vito's acts with other men, he does realize that he is much more tolerant than the majority of the men he commands. Tony explains to Dr. Melfi that he understands a man being with a man if he were in prison and had no other option. Prison seems to be the only place where Tony feels this behavior is to be tolerated. Tony also feels he must protect Vito from harm because he is, after all, his top earner. As the rumor spreads about Vito's sexual orientation, Meadow ends up hearing Rosalie and Carmela speaking about Marie and Vito separating. Meadow then says that Finn once saw Vito with a guy at the construction site in his van. When Tony hears this news, he is also surprised and he asks Finn to come clean about what he saw Vito doing that night. After Finn explains what he saw, Vito's fate is sealed. Now the viewer knows Vito is in serious danger. Due to the fact Vito is Tony's top earner, Tony strongly considers allowing him to return. After Carlo and Silvio hear this opinion from Tony, they are appalled and warn him that this hurts all their reputations and that if he allowed Vito back in, he would lose all respect from the guys on the street. As we catch back up with Finn and Meadow, Finn is afraid that the information he shared with Tony about Vito's sexuality will now be used to take him out. Meadow tells Finn that he shouldn't assume that Vito is in danger. Meadow takes offense at the idea that her father and his friends are a bunch of criminals, and instead she sees them as an oppressed group of Italians. Finn sticks to his belief that Vito will surely be taken out by the hardened criminals Meadow calls her family. Meadow ends by telling Finn that he is simply ashamed of being Italian like the rest of them. Meadow grows upset and tells Finn that their relationship is untenable and they end up breaking up. In this scene, we see how Meadow's education at Columbia has taught her that in life, you have oppressor and oppressed. She in turn applies this philosophy to her crime family in order to justify their actions and criminal activity. Whenever Finn tries to bring up facts about how the DeMeo crew operates and how they hurt other people, Meadow simply brushes it off and tells Finn that he wouldn't understand because he simply isn't Italian enough. In another scene, we see Phil Leotardo is deeply offended by Vito's sexual orientation because he is, after all, married to Marie, and she is his cousin. Phil feels that Vito now brings shame and dishonor to his entire family. We also see that Marie refuses to tell him about her obvious suspicions, and she repeats that Vito is a good father and husband. Marie understands what likely will be done to Vito, and she tries to protect him, but is not successful at convincing Phil. In the last scene, Vito walks into an antique shop and looks back to see someone parking their car in front of his. When he looks down at their license plate to see if they are from New York or New Jersey, he notices it is a New Hampshire plate and reads the state motto, "Live free or die." At this moment, Vito has chosen to live as he truly is. However, he knows this choice will surely end up costing him his life if he is ever found. While in the antique store, he ends up picking out the most expensive piece and expressing interest in the piece. The store owner tells him he clearly has an eye for good taste.
Well, you've got a good eye. It's the most expensive piece in the store.
That was episode number 71, titled Live Free or Die. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. In the description, you will also find additional links for supporting our channel. I'll see you on the next one.
You ain't gonna have no problem from Vito, believe me.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.